In the final months of 2001, 3 women competed for the title of the main pop girl: a Hollywood crossover juggernaut, a classical piano prodigy, and the pioneer of modern pop R&B. But only one took the crown. The root of this chart battle was sheer financial panic behind closed doors. Record labels were terrified of the encroaching digital era, and their solution was to throw unprecedented amounts of cash at the legacy divas of the 90s, hoping to forcefully keep the traditional CD era alive. In April, Virgin Records handed Mariah Carey an $80 million contract. Just 4 months later, Arista gave Whitney Houston a staggering $100 million deal. But the audience was already moving on. In October of that year, Apple released the very first iPod, effectively signaling the end of the physical CD format these labels were banking on. The old playbook of releasing a standard pop ballad and letting radio carry it was completely shattering. This was proven by the collapse of the 90s pop guard that summer. When Mariah Carey released Loverboy to launch her glitter era, the industry expected an instant #1. Instead, it debuted at number 79. It only managed to scrape its way up to number 2 because Virgin Records desperately slashed the physical CD price to capitalize on the sensational press surrounding her highly publicized hospitalization. Loverboy would go on to be the biggest selling physical single of the year, peaking at number 2, but the radio airplay simply wasn't there. The traditional pop landscape was actively rejecting the old formula. The cultural appetite had aggressively shifted towards hip-hop, R&B, and intense visual iconography. Britney Spears realized this immediately, pivoting from teen pop to walking out on the MTV VMA stage with a live python on her shoulders, cooing sexually over funky Pharrell beats. If you wanted to dominate in 2001, you had to entirely rebuild your sound for urban radio, strip away the pop artifice completely, or be the literal blueprint for the new R&B pop crossover. Our first contender, Jennifer Lopez, set the baseline for commercial dominance by executing a flawless dual-market takeover. Lopez opened 2001 by dropping Love Don't Cost a Thing, shooting straight to the top of the UK charts. Her sophomore album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, the exact same week her film The Wedding Planner topped the box office. But her most brilliant strategic move came when she realized the industry was tilting heavily into hip-hop. Her team didn't just remix I'm Real. They entirely rebuilt it from the ground up. The Murder remix featuring Ja Rule spent 5 weeks at number 1 in the US, proving you could manufacture a polished pop anthem for Europe and a gritty hip-hop leaning hit for America, all under the same brand. J-Lo's blueprint of merging Hollywood box office metrics with Billboard dominance triggered an immediate demand for massive visual spectacle. By the summer of 2001, you couldn't just release a music video, you had to release a blockbuster. The peak of this maximalist packaging arrived in June, when 4 artists, Christina Aguilera, Lil' Kim, Maya, and Pink, were assembled to completely monopolize the culture.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moulin Rouge.
It was a camp, burlesque extravaganza battle of the divas. It commanded the Billboard Hot 100 number 1 spot for 5 straight weeks and simultaneously conquered the UK charts. The visual styling was so perfectly crafted that it predictably swept the MTV Video Music Awards for Video of the Year, and well deserved. But this reliance on heavy visual packaging exposed a severe fracture in the global market. What was dominating America wasn't necessarily translating across the Atlantic and vice versa. While the US was doubling down on hip-hop collaborations and high-budget burlesque, the UK was experiencing a sleek, futuristic dance pop revival. In late September, Kylie Minogue dropped Can't Get You Out of My Head. It became an inescapable phenomenon, dominating dance floors and locking down the UK number 1 spot for a month straight, while moving massive volume. Yet, because of the rigid, heavily segmented nature of the international markets at the time, this undeniable global dance hit was prevented from impacting the stateside market until 2002. The industry was split between 2 extremes: heavily manufactured R&B pop spectacles in the US and sleek electronic dance anthems in Europe, with a few breakthrough acts managing to straddle both sides of the Atlantic. Label executives were convinced that the only way to win was to spend millions on visual effects, superstar collaborations, and high-fashion wardrobing. This was the beginning of the bling era. This fractured landscape is exactly why the industry was blindsided by the next shift. J.Lo had the metrics, the films, and the radio dominance. She proved you could manufacture a flawless pop machine. But while the industry was doubling down on heavy production and shiny remixes, the culture was disrupted by an artist doing the exact opposite. Arriving with just a piano and a classically trained, deeply soulful voice, Alicia Keys made neo-soul the sound of 2001. Her debut, Songs in A Minor, wasn't just a critical success, it was a commercial juggernaut. It took the #1 spot on the Billboard 200 in late July, moving over 220,000 copies in a single week. The lead single, Falling, was a slow burn hit that completely disrupted the heavily manufactured chart landscape. It commanded the Billboard Hot 100 for 6 weeks and resonated so heavily with the culture that it finished as the #2 song of the entire year on the Billboard year-end Hot 100, beating out virtually every established pop veteran. She came out of the gate proving that raw musical architecture could compete with high-budget pop spectacles. Her only flaw in this specific battle for the ultimate crown was purely volume. Alicia didn't quite have the multi-single, multi-format saturation required to take the absolute top spot, because while newcomers like Alicia Keys were stripping the production down and Hollywood juggernauts like J.Lo were winning with dual market spectacles, our final contender was busy reminding everyone exactly who built the modern crossover. Labels were hemorrhaging hundreds of millions trying to force outdated pop formulas onto a shifting radio format. But Janet Jackson didn't stumble. She wasn't trying to catch up to the new R&B pop convergence. She was the one that built it. In April of 2001, Janet released her 7th studio album, All For You. The lead single was a flawless execution of frictionless pop. Instead of battling the gritty, heavy hip-hop dominance that J.Lo had to pivot toward, Janet's team brilliantly built the track around a sample of the 1980 disco funk anthem The Glow of Love by Change. This was an incredibly strategic maneuver. It bypassed the aggressive chart wars entirely by offering a shimmering, undeniable groove that both radio programmers and club DJs were desperate to play. And the music video had a phenomenal dance breakdown to give the single that edge it needed. On April 14th, All For You hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. And it didn't just peak, it set up camp, remaining at the summit for 7 consecutive weeks. It became the longest reigning #1 hit of the entire year. By the time the album dropped 10 days later, the momentum was unstoppable. The All For You album debuted at #1 with first week sales obliterating the 600,000 mark. So who's our runner-up? It has to go to Jennifer Lopez. J.Lo took the pop-rap hybrid, heavily popularized by Mariah Carey, and brought it kicking and screaming into the new millennium. Some might say at the expense of the success of Mariah, but that's a story for another day. Our honorable mention for 2001 goes to the one and only Miss Alicia Keys. Her stunning debut album and its timeless lead single still sound as fresh today as they did then. And her career is one that I followed closely over the years, and her raw talent continues to shine through. Which means our main pop girl of 2001 is the legendary Miss Janet Jackson. Janet didn't just survive the chaotic shift from late 90s pop into the heavily segmented, multi-format battleground of the early 2000s. She navigated it with effortless pop perfection. Gone were the moody, depressive musings of the Velvet Rope. She channeled her own Rhythm Nation statement. Get the point? Good. Let's dance. She ended the year as the #1 artist by total weeks at the top of the Billboard Hot 100, proving that pop architecture, when constantly evolved, never goes out of style. She commanded the industry without a live Python, without a desperate label price slash. She won strictly on the undeniable gravity of her own musical blueprint. Janet Jackson was the undeniable anchor of 2001, proving she was the absolute architect of the modern R&B pop crossover. But that blueprint wasn't built overnight. The exact foundation for this 2001 dominance was actually laid 8 years earlier, when she completely shattered her family's mold, abandoned her old formula, and took ruthless control of her own image and sexuality. The anatomy of that specific transformation is right here.